Welcome, everyone. My name is Nadia Zaim, and I am one of the co-chairs of the Westlake North Olmsted chapter of the League of Women Voters of Greater Cleveland. The League is a nonpartisan political organization that encourages informed and active participation in government, works to increase understanding of major public policy issues, and influences public policy through education and advocacy. Tonight, we are hosting a forum on Issue 1, the North Olmsted School Board School Bond and Levy. This forum is being co-sponsored by the North Olmsted PTA Council. This forum is being recorded. It will be posted on our website and our Facebook page after the program. Please note that this recording is the property of the League, and no portion of it can be used without our express prior written permission. Our moderator this evening is Pam Smith, member of the Lakewood chapter. I will now turn it over to her to introduce our speakers.
Thank you, Nadia. It's my pleasure to be here for everyone to understand what Issue 1 is about in North Olmsted that will be voted upon at the primary on Tuesday, May 3rd. Issue 1 is very important school issue, and we will first hear from Chris Glassburn to explain Issue 1, and then he will go forward to introduce the superintendent of North Olmsted Public Schools. Mr. Glassburn?
Thank you, Ms. Smith. As you said, my name is Chris Glassburn. I'm a 25-year resident and alumnus of North Olmsted City Schools. And my portion of this program is simply to tell you what this issue does for all of the residents, not just those that have students in the district. Issue 1 primarily allows the North Olmsted Board of Education to consolidate their 6 elementary schools into one location that will save taxpayers money. Specifically, we're paying over $3 million per year more to maintain 6 buildings instead of a single consolidated building. Secondly, the site chosen for that building will involve Birch Elementary gaining access to Lorraine Road, which is going to take out a motel that has been a crime hotspot for the city of North Olmsted for several years now. So with the elimination of that motel, we should see a reduction in crime in that area. And then third, that this issue is about supporting the regular education of our kids in the community. This levy is the smallest operating levy the city has had to vote on since 1988. So this is one heck of a proposal from my view. And the superintendent of the schools, who's just in his first year here, but he has been a dynamo getting things done, is David Brand, and he will speak in much more detail about what each of these, how this proposal works and what these points mean.
Mr. Brandt, would you like to speak now?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you, Chris. And thank you for all who are attending again. I am Dave Brand, blessed to be the superintendent of North Olmsted, but I am also here as a father. I have 2 daughters in the district and a resident of North Olmsted as well. And as Mr. Glassburn said, Issue 1 does tear down a crime-ridden hotel that's had over 130 calls in a year alone. That will also get us access to Lorraine Road. A site selection task force looked at all of our properties to find the best property that not only for the school, but for the community as a whole. And I think it was wonderful to come through with Birch. It's a very large property and it comes right there at Walter and Lorraine, being able to come through by obtaining that property there. It's currently that hotel. Secondly, about it being able to protect taxpayers, part of what we heard, did a lot of different listening sessions, was just to make sure that we put forth a plan that was sustainable and that kept taxpayers in mind as we did this. And so this plan does allow us to reduce our ongoing expenditures. It also helps us to lower our footprint so we can consolidate and have buildings, newer buildings, less money going towards the repair of buildings and the upkeep and just keeping the doors open of our 6 current elementary schools and moving them to 1. And so some people can ask me a lot about repair versus remodel versus new. Repairing is over about 46 million. And that is just to keep the doors open of those elementary schools. It doesn't do anything to improve the environment. It is simply the roofs, the foundations, things of that nature. Remodeling, getting it up to snuff of what we need with the safety concerns, secure vestibules, educational environments, that's 75 to 80 million, where one new building would cost 58 million with an 18% rebate from the state. So it's the lowest cost option to deal with our facilities, but it also gives us the opportunity to lower our expenditures by $3.2 million a year. So not only does it deal with the facility issues, it addresses our overall operational into a better educational environment, a better experience for our kids, more equal opportunities for all of our kids, no matter where they live in the district, having equal access to the various services we have in North Olmsted. And so the issue one, what is issue one? It's a 7.8 mil combined levy. That's a 5 mil operating levy, a $58 million bond, which is about 2.8 mils. So that's $22.75 per month per $100,000 home. I do think it's important to note that the 1.6 mils of our property taxes are coming off because the library and the fire station, those bonds and those issues are coming off at the end of this calendar year. So that really will end up becoming, you'll see a net increase of just over $18.08 per month per $100,000 home. And I also want to talk about how we have then 5 remaining properties that we would be able to sell to the city, and the city would be able to redevelop and those unused properties. As you guys know how challenging it is to find land and untapped land in North Olmsted. And working with the city has been wonderful since I've gotten here, and I think we'll just add increased value to this project beyond the surface of the project. Excuse me, but even further down the road. And talking about the educational opportunities, consolidating into one facility would allow us to have that small school feel within each of it. A lot of folks, just like our middle school and high school, it's really 2 buildings, but it's one facility, but feels like 2. The design of this building will be very similar. It'll feel like smaller buildings all within one. So you'll have the benefits of having all of our 2nd graders together or all of our 3rd graders together, but also the synergy and the benefits of having the other kids around. So you can have the mentorships between, say, 5th graders and our kindergartners and reading programs, and also have other educational benefits and services that we won't have folks driving around the district to trying to help kids, help service them, whether it's with speech therapy or any other type of therapy and needs that they may have. The district is also ensured to have one of the lowest asks in decades. We made $2 million worth of reductions going into next school year. So that means starting next school year, North Olmsted City Schools will have 100 less staff members than it did the last time an operating levy was passed, which was in 2010. Here is a layout of what the proposed new property would look like and the benefit it will have to not our students, our families, and to the neighborhood here on the Birch area. On the left area over here, you see Lorraine Road. The entrance here is right here is that hotel that something that really needs to go in our town. And then you see the larger building here. One side would be the intermediate side. The other would be our primary side. Parents would enter through these entrances here. The shared spaces in the middle will be a large gymnasium. And in that gymnasium in the evenings, outside of school hours, we work with the rec department for access for that space as well. See multiple playgrounds. Well, if you also see a walking trail, excuse me, around the entire property as well for community usage. There is still an entrance shown off to Palm there, but that is only for emergencies and district vehicles. It would be a gated entrance that only emergency vehicles, police, fire, and as the district could get into. So that way we would alleviate all the traffic from that neighborhood as something else that we heard as a concern. Okay, just hitting on some of those highlights there. A lot of green space, which is something that we heard through all of our listening sessions and building this plan, was to be able to have some playground space and some green space, as well as some shared usage space for the public in the evenings and when school's not in session. Here's a rendering of what one side of the building would look like. Another thing we heard was to try to have that same classic look that the old town hall had, the library has, and the middle school and high school has. So, and really the outside of the bones, the structure of any of the school buildings, so they have that similar look to them. And then you get that real primary look and that more elementary look on the inside with color and just the way the rooms and such are designed that way, but you can see the large field. And again, what I would just call that classic look and to try to tap into the heritage and traditions of North Olmsted. One thing that's really important, I think, for everyone to understand is what does it preserve, right? We understand that this allows us to have reduced ongoing expenses. We understand that this allows us to provide a great education, and it also provides a long-term solution and reduces crime, but also it preserves another $1 million worth of services and programming. So unfortunately, if the issue were to fail here on May 3rd, in addition to the $2 million worth of reductions already put in place, we would have to make another $1 million worth of reductions. And so that would mean we would move to reduce transportation to the state minimum, which means we would only transport kindergartners through 8th graders who live more than 2 miles away from their school building. We would institute an increased pay to participate fee for all athletics, extracurricular activities, clubs throughout the district. We would also see more staffing reductions that obviously will result in decreased student services, increased class sizes, and a decrease in course offerings and services for our children. So we're hoping that through issue 1, we can preserve those $1 million worth of expenditures. These are some folks who've endorsed issue 1. Proud that a lot of people have come forward as individuals, council members, state representatives, many of our labor unions, as well as obviously a lot of our North Olmsted community groups as well. So with that, I will make sure.
You can turn it back to me.
I will turn it over, but I'll make sure between Ann and Chris, I didn't miss anything that you would like to hit on before turning it over to questions.
And that's exactly what I was going to suggest. Ann Hodges is here. Ann Hodge is here, who's chairman of the campaign. And Chris is a volunteer. And they may have seen this presentation many times, but imagining that they're a resident and a voter that's seeing this for the first time, Ann or Chris, would you have some comments to add?
Ann, go ahead.
You know, this presentation I have seen a number of times, and it hits home more and more. The details and the facts were compelling to start with, and then when the task force met and decided that Birch was the site that we felt was best for the proposed school, and we were able to then, you know, reduce crime with getting rid of this motel, or the proposal to get rid of this motel is really makes it even more compelling. There's a nearly empty retail space there, which we often hear is one of the things that residents in North Olmsted want changed. They want to fill our empty storefronts or get rid of them. So this kind of ticks that box. It ticks the box of having an upgraded new facility. All of our schools are over 60 years old. Renovating them is throwing, good money after bad. And this is a really, really great opportunity for our current students and future students and this community. So I just think it gets better and better every time I see it.
Thank you. Chris, would you have anything to add as a longtime volunteer and resident of North Olmsted?
Well, I'll just add that we've seen proposals in the past that have been for much higher amounts that just delivered for the ongoing operations of the schools. And what really impressed me about this issue and what motivated me to get much more involved was seeing the value for not just the families with students, but for the rest of North Olmsted in terms of the reduced operating costs and the protection long-term of our city and the allowing for redevelopment of those other 5 sites. The other 5 sites, 4 of the 5 are zoned residential already. The 5th is a mix of residential and commercial, but this allows North Olmsted to grow again in many different ways. And that's why I'm so supportive of this issue.
Thank you. I'd like to remind people who are watching this in the live portion to please put your questions in the Q&A at the bottom of the Zoom screen. We have some questions that have been thought about and asked in the community, and we will start out with those. But inevitably, as you're hearing people, you may come up with a question that you would like to be answered as part of this forum. It would then become part of this forum, and as this whole session is being recorded, other people in the community would have the opportunity to hear your question. I would ask it and hear the answer to your question. So please put questions in the Q&A. We are fortunate that Mary Codafan, who's president of the PTA in North Olmsted, has submitted some questions, but I would like to ask you first, Mary, would you have any comment about this presentation?
No, I would say similar to Chris, just I've been on a lot of these task force for a number of years in previous levy proposals. And the fact that we can look at a new building and an operating levy at a lesser cost than a previous just operating levy is outstanding. And I can just say as a parent, we need something new. I've been substituting in the schools as well this past year, and I've been able to get kind of the teacher perspective as well. And just to let people know that there's such a need for an improved space. I mean, just being able to plug things into a classroom, people don't realize that there aren't that many outlets in a room. So you think we've got all these great technology and Chromebooks and we have these carts to plug them in, but like not all of the outlets work, or they're not near where you need them to be in order to use them. And I think those little things that people don't realize what something like this can solve. Like, yes, we do need something new to update the electrical, to make the ventilation better. We have got kids with allergies. I remember having a friend whose daughter, when pollen season, as we know we're getting close to now, like would have to miss school because the windows have to be open to keep it cool enough, pollen's blowing in. There's so many things like that. And it's just really exciting as a parent to see something new coming along. So I'm really excited about this proposal.
Thank you. You know, one thing I think people in North Olmsted may be curious about is the move from neighborhood schools to one facility in the city. And I'm sure you've had some questions about that, and you may have something to add about current educational theory to explain why that's a good idea. But I wonder, Mr. Brandt, if you could address that, and then other panelists as they may see opportunity to do the same.
Absolutely, thank you. That is a common question, and I do think it's understandable. And if you've talked to anyone in other communities that have gone through a similar process, some of those fears are expected and known, but then they actually typically see the opposite once the new building is off the ground. By having the one facility, we're able to balance our class sizes better. For instance, as we're spread out now, in a fairly small square mile town, we may have on one side, in one of the buildings have class sizes say 19, where another building it might be 29. And so obviously those students are receiving a much different experience. We have some of our highly skilled therapists, speech therapists and otherwise who were early on at elementary level intervention is going to really is when the power of those interventions take over. And right now they're having to travel between buildings. And so really they're wasting a half hour, an hour of their highly skilled day that they could be working with children by driving. And so this allows for better attention and more kids to receive services. And depending on which building and which side of town you're on, differs the ability that we have for various tutoring services and other reading intervention supports and things of that nature. So we'd be able to have all of that. We would have, but as you enter, and then you enter and say the second grade area, you would be with your second grade peers. And so we would be very intentional with that and having that small school feel where your teachers still know every child by name and all of their traits and personalities and what makes them amazing and what makes them tick, as well as allowing to see them grow all the way through their elementary years by being in that same building. You gain a little more sense of community while enhancing the educational services that we can provide.
Thank you. Chris or Ann, would you have any comments to the community who have just some misunderstanding or reservations about combining so many buildings into one?
Well, there's a couple of other aspects of this. When these schools were at their peak, we had almost twice as many students as we have today. And so we are paying for, as taxpayers and as in a community, the dollars to maintain twice the school infrastructure than what we need. But what we're also doing is we are dedicating 100 acres of our city towards elementary schools when we really need maybe 20 acres. And that's new homes, that's new opportunities for our city to do other things and to grow. So I think you really have to remember that it's just as simple as, if you had to mow 6 lawns or you could mow 1 lawn, which would you do? You'd mow 1. That cost savings saves all of us as taxpayers and affords opportunity for growth in the city.
Thank you. Ann?
I think from talking to many residents, just working on this issue, I actually had a little bit of a change of mind. I loved the, kind of neighborhood feel of the schools, and I live in the neighborhood where Maple School is. And I wasn't kind of sold on it at first until I talked to a lot of those parents who they may have a child in one school and another child in another school and another child in another school, even though they're in, second grade and third grade because of the way that our schools are broken up now. So that was one thing of consolidating the schools and having it one school. That's more beneficial for families that have different age children, obviously. And I think the other thing that Superintendent Brand mentioned is that you're having that mentorship and those older kids, in the building, even though their kids are with their age range, and there's 2 separate buildings, there is that opportunity to, to have different mentorships and friendships and opportunities for kids to collaborate. And I think that's a big thing from talking to residents while working on this issue.
Thank you. We have a question that some residents, seeing this presentation and understanding that you're by this, you're getting rid of a problem property, that motel, and also an unused retail property. What about the cost of those? Are those figured into the cost of issue 1? And is there any danger that there could be a problem purchasing those properties, or they might skew too high? What could you say to answer that concern?
Understandable, though that is considered in part of the budget and planned out. When you look at any one of our properties that we would have been able to utilize, we would have had to obtain property to help enter. For instance, if it was in, say, Pine. Pine has that narrow 2-lane road with only one way in off Dover Center. And as we learned with some situations we had this year, that's problematic. But we would have had to purchase parts of homes to be able to have turn lanes and things of that nature and still not have the infrastructure needed. So as you plan and as you budget, whether it's for lights, road improvements, road widening, or to be able to obtain access to what's already a 5-lane road with great infrastructure, we're very confident in that ability. And there's many different levers that the district has available to obtain that property and have no concerns with that.
Thank you. What about the schools that will then be vacated and the property there? Does that property belong to the schools or to North Olmsted? Would it be offered to private developers? Is there any consideration of what may happen?
Absolutely. So Ohio Revised Code tells us how we end up removing the property from the district. The district would sell the property. We're committed to working with the city of North Olmsted to link that with their vision and mission, what their long-term strategic plan is for the city. So I will jump onto that as far as saying that any proceeds from the sale of those properties can only go towards capital things of whether it's purchasing property, building buildings, or to pay off bond debt. So that would help lower the total cost of the bond or the number of years we have to pay. We can't use the sale of the property towards operating expenses. That's not allowable expense. But we are working closely with the city and their leadership, and committed to making sure that those properties are able to be developed in a way that's beneficial for the city and beneficial and aligned with their vision and mission. They're much more equipped to handle and deal with economic development and development in general than us as a school district. So we're trying to partner and work well with them.
Now, what about this new building is going to house a lot of students, and it will be an excellent building. And now you have a new middle school and a new high school. So the prospects are that people will want to establish themselves in North Olmsted and move to the town. Can these buildings accommodate a growth in population?
Absolutely. They're designed, and we work with the Ohio Facility Construction Commission because they're the folks who are the state is helping obviously with that 18% rebate. So they want to make sure things are done well and done right as well. So it's built to the right size. It's built for growth to potentially occur and hopefully will occur. But it's also not built as Mr. Glassburn was talking about what North Olmsted was, say, in the 80s and 90s, as far as the number of students and the number of youth living in the community. So there is room for growth and room for expansion if need be. But they're built and designed for at least what's projected out to be the next 15 years worth of growth in the community.
Thank you very much. Now, some people, knowing that a year ago, or slightly more than that, before you were on the scene, Mr. Brand, a levy and bond issue did fail. So there's a question that's come up of what would happen if this were to fail. Is there any thought that it would go on the ballot soon again, or would you move to work within your existing budget?
Well, unfortunately, we can't work within the existing budget. Does not allow us to get through the 23-24 school year. And so we're at fiscal caution with it's a different term, but it's basically fiscal caution with Ohio Department of Education now. And so we have to develop a solution and a way out of that. And through the reductions we made, we've also worked and negotiated 2 new contracts with our 2 unions with concessions, financial concessions with both unions to try to help our financial situation. But if we're unfortunate that this does not pass in on May 3rd, we would have to make those $1 million worth of reductions that we talked about a little earlier, as well as I would assume, but this is the Board of Education's decision and not mine, but I don't see another solution other than going onto the ballot again.
Thank you. Mary, you sent in a question commenting that some people seeing the new builds that had gone up for the high school and the middle school, they're different schools. They have different facilities in them than were in the old schools. And it looked like there were a lot of extras to those people. And that, of course, is a debatable subject because all schools are you're in competition in your town with the next town, and we all want the best education for our students. But could you refine that question as it may relate to this new property?
I don't always know what people are talking about. So this is my first year. I have a middle schooler this year. And so I don't see a whole lot of extra things there that I wouldn't want for him at school. But I think maybe it would be helpful for people to understand when you build a new building, I think people think about furniture, and we've got some really cool alternative seating, which I know a lot of the teachers love and welcome, and it works well for the students. So are there like packages that come with it? So if I say I'm building a new primary school, are the furnishings included? Is it like when you build a house and you get, your builder grade cabinets and things like that? I think people think, oh, you spent this extra. I could say, like, as a parent, as a substitute, I don't want the old desks coming over. I had students whose desks wouldn't close all the way. And so they'd have to take one hinge out to keep it closed, but then it didn't stay open. I would hope there would be new furnishings, but how does that work with a builder? And is it really extra, or is it kind of included in the price?
It is
Good
included.
question.
It definitely is included in, obviously, anything that we have that is still usable for us, so we can bring over and utilize. However, the new furnishing, whether it's the desks or anything else that is part of opening a school, is included in that the total bond amount to be able to obtain. And then so with that, we have to also remember that we're just like generations before built buildings to prepare the students of those years for their futures. We as well. And so we have to make sure that we have the courses, the spaces designed to prepare our kids for whatever may come. You obviously 50 years ago would have never predicted we'd be doing a session like this, over computers and things of that nature. So things will change. So you want to make sure that the building is designed to be able to change to whatever the needs of those teachers and of those students are in the future. Some of those things that I do hear people talk about is maybe all the glass or things of that nature. They're actually safety features. They're built-in safety features of newer schools, so we can keep our children safe and our buildings safe. So a lot of the architectural design are lessons learned to make sure that we have the separate entrances for our buses versus our walkers and versus the secure vestibules and things of that nature, the lot of glass so we can see out. All of those things are features to help secure our building and keep everyone safe and promote learning. To have that natural light as well is very important with that. So those would be some of the points I'd make.
Thank you. This may seem like a strange question, but it's come up in other forums. What about energy use in the school? How is it going to work with gas and oil? Is there any option for solar energy or alternative energy use?
Mr. Glassberg, did you want to speak before I hop on this question?
Sure. I mean, just to the last two questions, the question kind of gives the implication that we're choosing between something that's okay right now and something new. That's not the choice that is on the ballot now, or if there are any issues in the future. Beyond that $3 million a year, we're paying an extra cost to just sustain where we're at. You've got schools that have problems where their HVAC systems are at the end of their lifespan. And unfortunately, you can't go to the store and buy a 5-year furnace. you buy a furnace that is designed to last for decades, or you don't. And it's not a function of these furnaces not being maintained. They are at the end of their useful life. And so at some point we have to stop spending good money after bad. We have to cut our losses on things that are not good investments. And so that's really what I see as the choice here. And again, why I'm so enthusiastic about this issue.
Thank you.
With your question there regarding the energy and the efficiency part of it, LEED certification is something that is required in order to receive the 18% rebate from the state. So there are various things that we will do to make sure we're at least LEED silver. And so there's lots of options when it comes through those ways. But whether we're really in a location and everything else that makes some of those options like solar or winds and all those other different things, all those different options, if they make them actually feasible for us in our situation, that would be something that would be told down the line as you get past into the design phase. But there's other ways that you can, even with more traditional heating and cooling and lighting, you can do to save energy and to save money through that. And so that's why we would have to be at least LEED silver.
Thank you. You did show a layout of the school and its relationship to Lorraine Road. And is that green space between the road and the school? Will people on Lorraine be able to see the schools, to know where to turn in, et cetera? Because I'm familiar with that point,
Yep.
the Pine School driveway.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely, you would. One of the one image that was more of the 3D type, the front, that was what you would see from Lorraine Road, or actually basically standing in that green field space, that green space in front of it. So that would be the portion of the building you could see from Lorraine, but it still is quite a distance off of Lorraine Road for various reasons. One, so we can have a good traffic flow coming in and out. So for whether it's for parent pickup and drop off, or whether it is for our buses to come in and out, but also just the safety of keeping our kids off of not too close to Lorraine Road.
Mm-hmm. I understand. If there's a question that has come in that reads, if the levy bond does not pass, and are the $1 million in cuts really necessary? What about inflation? How is that going to impact cuts for this year? Ooh, in the news.
Absolutely. So yes, those $1 million worth of reductions are absolutely needed so that we can again sustain and be able to operate as a district on top of the $2 million that were already reduced going into next year. And I think for my perspective, it's also when you talk about inflation or other things, it's critical that we do these, that we pass this issue now. That this is the lowest cost that we can do to sustain and be able to realize those savings of consolidation and realize those operational savings. And the longer it gets put off, the more costly it's going to be.
Thank you. I do not have any other questions in my queue, but I know we've got great people on this panel that may have heard other questions within the community that should be brought forward and answered in a forum like this. Chris, Ann, would you have any comments? Or Mary?
I feel like I've spoken quite a bit so far, but so if anyone wants to jump in first, that's fine by me.
I would say I could speak kind of what you were talking about before, the neighborhood school thing. I know this comes up a lot. There's a lot of people who have history in the city who want their kids to go to the same schools that they went to. And I remember feeling that way, like going through some of these selection committees, thinking like, oh, I love the neighborhood schools. And then the idea of consolidating services was appealing. And then we had a pandemic and I thought, oh, would it be better to have smaller buildings? But I will say, as a parent, having a middle schooler now, like being in a situation where all the kids are in the same place, I really don't feel any more left out as a parent, or that my son has any less opportunities than we did. I've been through Birch, I've been through Maple, these nice neighborhood schools, nice and close. Yeah, the middle school takes a couple extra minutes to get to, but I feel like opportunities have been probably greater than we've had because, like Mr. Brand said, you've got all the kids there. So you can do all these different clubs, all these activities. You can find your place in that in ways that you couldn't when it was just a small group of kids. I still feel really connected as a parent. The district has done such a nice job of making a big space feel small. So I'm confident when the primary intermediate building comes up, it'll be the same. I have a sixth grader. I feel like I know the team of teachers. I feel very connected to the school, even though all the kids in the district are in the building. They've designed it in such a way to feel like a small, there's just like this pod or this studio. So I'm confident you'll still get that small school feel, because I don't feel like the middle school is huge by any means. I still feel very connected to it. So that was helpful for me as a parent to experience that this year. And I think the district will be able to achieve that. I think people will get that small town feeling with a big building.
Thank you. Anne, as chairman of the campaign, a question has come in that a year ago, a somewhat similar issue did fail. And perhaps it failed because of COVID issues. I mean, there's been such a myriad of complications in all of our lives, but it did go down. And so you have a big burden to educate people and make sure people know the need and especially the positive nature of this bond issue and levy. Would you have any comments from being on the ground with people about how people are responding now?
Sure. And Pam, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there. A big part of this campaign is educational for the residents of North Olmsted. I think I wasn't involved with that levy proposal last year. I believe it was about exactly a year ago. And I think that it was, it kind of came a little bit out of nowhere. People felt like it wasn't, information wasn't available for it. They didn't, there wasn't a lot of lead time on it. And perhaps that was a COVID, it was a victim of COVID. So our biggest thing here really is to get the word out about the positives of this and the need. Letting people know that we're at a point of this is I don't want to say a do or die, but this is a necessity that we have. It's been 10 years since we've had a levy. This is the if you lack of a better word, it's a really good deal. We're getting a new building and some operating funds for less than it would cost to renovate and remodel. So those are the big messages that we want to share with people, and we want them to know that this is what we feel like is a really, really good proposal for the city of North Olmsted, the community, our students now and future students. I think that's a big part of it.
Thank you. I know that within the North Olmsted community, as has been alluded to, you have a lot of loyal residents who've lived there for a very long time, and undoubtedly you have a lot of senior citizens too. And I think it's really important that we very carefully explain to senior citizens the advantage of passing this rather than letting the status quo remain in place. Chris, you alluded to this earlier in the call, but can you again explain why it would be a good idea for the senior citizens in North Olmsted to vote yes on this issue?
Again, this is the first issue that I can recall that was designed and has features that are for residents that don't have students in the district right now, whether you're a senior, young family, or just empty nesters in general. If you don't have schools, kids in the district, not having the 3 p.m. Traffic line going around the block in your development is a positive. To be blunt, if not paying 8.5 mils, but now only 5 mils for operating is what's necessary to maintain the community as is. That's almost half price. So those are some really big differences. But quite honestly, North Olmsted, amongst other things, doesn't have a lot of diversity in its housing and offerings. Part of the down the line benefits of this is that we can have at some of these sites those cluster homes or ranch homes that are more suited for seniors and others to live in the community throughout each generation or each phase of their life, instead of having to choose between staying in a 2,500 square foot multi-story building when they're, a widow, or they're just, empty nesters, while still loving to stay in their community. So this is the right deal for the long haul, but it's the right deal in the short term for taxpayers as well. And I can't recall seeing in this community or another community an issue like this where you can honestly say the taxpayers will end up spending more money by voting no than by voting yes.
Well, you've got your hands full explaining that, but I understand the logic, and I would like to thank you all for answering these questions. I have no more questions in the question line. Is there any other comment that anyone on the panel here would like to make?
I'll just note to your question about getting the word out, and I saw in the chat, this has been a little bit of a challenge because this is such a unique proposal with so many different features, and the state of Ohio not deciding whether we were going to have a primary or not until 2 weeks ago. Trying to do a 4-month campaign in 4 weeks is hard, and talking with nuance in that short amount of time is hard, but this is a unique issue that's worth diving into the details and understanding the benefits and the opportunities of it.
Thank you. Thank you very much to Mr. Brandt, to our panelists. Thank you, Mary, for being on the call as well, and to Anne and to Chris. I'd like to turn it back to Nadia to close our meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Pam, and thank you to all our speakers. As you've heard a few times tonight, Election Day is Tuesday, May 3rd. Early voting has begun, both in person and at the Board of and by mail. On the ballot are races for statewide office, including Governor, Secretary of State, U.S. Senate, and U.S. Congress, as well as Cuyahoga County Executive and judicial races. However, please note that the races for State House and State Senate are not on the ballot. Those races remain part of litigation, and a second primary will likely be held later this year. Please follow us on Facebook and sign up on our website to receive emails to keep up to date on this issue. For more information about what is on your ballots, along with the hours of early voting and your polling location, please go to vote411.org, which is our nonpartisan voter guide. Finally, the recording of this forum will be on our Facebook page and YouTube page. And please share this with your friends and neighbors who were not able to attend tonight's forum. Thank you again to our speakers and to all of you for attending.
Thank you.